Today, we're talking about the Nike Next Percent versus the Hoka Carbon X. .17 miles, 6 minutes, 57 seconds per mile today for a half marathon time of about 1 hour and 31 minutes. Definitely a fast run out there, getting in some miles on my long run in the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent. Now, this was a bit of a cutback week for me, or kind of a recovery week before we head into the final push of my marathon training. So that's why this week's long run was a little bit shorter, but even though shorter, it was supposed to be a little bit on the faster side. And I thought the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent would be perfect for that because it is one of my favorite marathon racing and also training shoes. Now, the week before that, I ran in the Hoka Carbon X, an 18-mile run with my running buddy, and absolutely loving the Carbon X for that run. Now, in terms of comparing these two shoes, they're both marathon racing shoes. They both have unusually thin and long laces, and they both have carbon fiber plates. But that's pretty much where the similarities end. When it comes to the upper on the Next Percent, we have the vapor weave material, which is intended when it does take on water or sweat or any of the moisture to be able to wick it away quickly, so that way it doesn't retain that weight and it stays light and breathable. In terms of the Hoka Carbon X, what we have is a very thin mesh material that is a little bit on the floppy side, but definitely still keeps you locked into the shoe while also staying very lightweight. In the heel counters for the Carbon X, what we have is basically some extra stitching to keep everything in place and very minimal padding along the heel cup, which is all very good in my opinion for racing. For the Next Percent, what we have is actually a little bit more structure. There's something back here that feels almost kind of cardboard-ish, but it is enough to keep your ankle in there, and there's a pad along the back, the part that would touch kind of right above like the main bulk of your heel, and does a good job of keeping everything locked in. I do think that overall, for those of you who have heel problems or are very concerned about heel slippage, I think overall, even though there's less kind of structural elements to the Carbon X, I think the Carbon X is going to be the better fit for you. And that's, I think, part because of all the lacing. There's lots of extra eyelets in here. There's the extra loop if you want to tie a runner's loop. But I just think the fit is really snug without being painful on the Achilles in the Carbon X. Now, they each have carbon fiber plates. And it's easy to think, okay, carbon fiber plate, two things are pretty much even or cancel each other out. I think that the way that the carbon fiber is in these two shoes or implemented is a little bit different. And also, I think part of that plays into the foams that are in each of these shoes. So you kind of have to talk about the two things at the same time. In the Vaporfly Next Percent, you've got Nike's Miracle Zoom X foam, which is a Pegasus foam, and I just love it. There's more of it in this version of the shoe than there was in previous years. And this year's I found to be a little bit bouncier, not as soft and cushioned as before. Not that it's not soft and cushioned, but I don't have as much of kind of not a sink-in feeling, but I don't have as much of the plush feeling in the Zoom X this year, but I definitely feel a lot of the bounce. It reminds me a lot of one of my other favorite foams, which is Nike's Phylon. That's a very bouncy foam. It reminds me of like hitting a racquetball and that ping that you get. But with the Phylon over long distances, it's not that soft of a material, so it can be a little bit painful. Your body is absorbing a lot of the impact of your foot strike. You get a lot of that same feel in the Vaporfly Next % this year in terms of the Zoom X foam, but you're still getting a lot of that same plush comfort that you get from the Vaporfly of the 4%, either last year's Flyknit or the original OG version. And it's just absolutely wonderful. And with the carbon fiber plate, you're getting the ability to absorb impact, and that carbon fiber plate helps push you out of like the sink in and pushes you forward. Overall, the feeling that I get is a strong push off plus that bouncy sensation, which helps with that fast turnover and makes me just feel like this is an incredibly fast and powerful shoe. I can definitely feel the shoe as I'm running in it. I feel its presence there. It's not obtrusive. It's not fighting me. It's definitely working with me, and I love the feeling. This is definitely going to be my race shoe for the Chicago Marathon, which is my goal marathon for the rest of 2019, and it's not even close for me. I absolutely love this shoe. But that's not to say that the Carbon X is any slouch. This Carbon X, I think that lots of people have been racing their gold marathons this year in this shoe, and lots of people will be. I think that this is a fantastic marathon shoe as well, but its approach is very different in terms of what it's doing and what the Next % is trying to do. It also has a carbon fiber plate, but its foam here is Hoka's Pro Fly X EVA foam. And the feeling here is not so much of a sink-in feeling. It's not so much of a push-off feeling that you get with the Zoom X of the Vaporfly Next. The overall sensation I get from this shoe is that it is smooth. I feel like it is just working with me, not in any way to push me along, not in any way to give me an extra boost anywhere, but it's just me, and it allows me to run and without feeling any of the impact of the road and feel less fatigued from the road. I think it's achieving this with a couple of things that it's doing very differently than the Vaporfly Next, which is it has a different heel drop. It has a different angle that the carbon fiber plate is in. I'm not positive of that, but that's what I suspect. That's what I'm feeling. And it has a difference in terms of the meta rocker, in terms of where it starts to help you out of your foot strike as your foot is having ground contact. And overall, that feeling is that you never feel like you're feeling a lot of the shoe at any one point, either on contact, either on the impact absorption, or on the push off, but you just sense that you're feeling very fluid, and the strides are easy. It's very easy to stay quick through your turnover, and running miles on these are just absolutely fantastic. It has a lower purchase price as well, and it's not quite as flashy. Not that this isn't a fantastic looking shoe, but it's not as flashy as the Vaporfly Next %. And so I suspect that people that don't want to show up to a race and send whatever message that they think that the Vaporfly Next might be sending or the 4% might be sending will easily be reaching for this shoe. And I think it's going to be a great choice, because the ultimate last area that I do think that these two shoes are very similar are in what kind of set apart for me a marathon racing shoe from, say, a half marathon racing shoe. And that is kind of 20-mile comfort. And for a lot of shoes, for example, what comes to mind is the Adidas Adios 4. And I absolutely love that shoe. I had such a great time running in it. I felt like it really showcased what boost can be in a running shoe, in terms of you got a really great sense of bounce, and you got a really great sense of propulsion and impact absorption. But the level and the way that they implemented it there, I don't think that I have the foot strength or just overall leg strength to be able to run in that shoe past a half marathon distance. And I think I went up to like maybe a 15-mile run in that shoe. But I always think about how tired your feet start to feel, not your overall body. separate and apart from that, how tired your feet will feel at about 20 miles into the marathon. And what would I want to have on my feet to either make that tiredness feeling feel less burdensome or to avoid it entirely. And both of these shoes, I think, are excellent at being able to do that. And so as you're starting to think about some of your long runs, as you're starting to think about what your race day shoe is going to be, I think that both of these shoes are excellent shoes to be running in. I think that they're great not only for people that are pushing for very fast times, but I think that for people all throughout the spectrum of paces can benefit from these shoes. I think that representatives from both of these companies have said similar things, but I do think that a lot of people who are running what they think are slower marathons are avoiding both of these kinds of shoes because they don't want to show up and look like they're kind of the weekend warrior that's kind of buying their way into a race. I can understand that. I get that. But what I overall want to kind of emphasize, and I get these kinds of comments all the time, is that it's your shoes and it's your money and it's your feet. So get to the race and run in the shoes that you want to run in, that you want to be comfortable in. Yes, there's tons of other really great options out there for you in terms of shoes for whatever distance and pace. But I think when it comes to the marathon, I don't think you have to have these shoes to have a good time. But for me, what sets apart a great marathon racing shoe from a great marathon training shoe or even a great half marathon racing shoe is what is it going to feel like at that 20-mile mark. I ran the 2017 Chicago Marathon in a pair of Pegasus 34s. I pretty much took it right out of the box and to the starting line. And that shoe, I think you can definitely run a marathon in the Pegasus. But at that 20-mile mark, I was having struggles in all sorts of ways that year. I did a lot of walking that year. It was a real struggle for me. It was my first Chicago Marathon. But I definitely felt it in my feet. And ever since then, maybe I'm overcompensating and looking for like these great marathon racers. But I do think that that's where like having a great marathon training shoe like the Pegasus, having a great racing shoe like I ran the 2018 Chicago Marathon and the Vaporfly 4% really makes a difference. Earlier this year, I ran the Tunnel Marathon out in Washington in the Vaporfly Next percent and just had an absolutely wonderful time running that race. I had so much fun. And I hit a PR and I felt great and my feet felt great past the 20-mile mark. My body was falling apart as I crossed the finish line, but it wasn't because of my feet. And so that's ultimately the point that I want to make between these two shoes. They're great. You guys have been asking for this head-to-head video. I think that ultimately they're both fantastic options depending on kind of what you think is going to suit your style. So those are my thoughts on the Vaporfly Next percent versus the Carbon X. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys down there. Before I go, I do want to talk about a new charity runner for this week. This week, it's Jerry Canterbury, who's running the Marine Corps Marathon in November for 26-1, which is Catherine Switzer's charity. It's an organization that's designed to empower women through running. I was very happy to donate $70 to Jerry's fundraising efforts. I'll post a link in the description in case you'd like to learn more. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it to the end of the video, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?